Antin, thank you for this invitation and Geroim Slava, first of all. Second of all, I think that America needs blessings now, perhaps now more than ever, because the situation is dangerous. And it's important to admit where the situation where we are. This is something that over the last 3 years, of the past 3 years, I've been speaking to people of Ukraine due to my ability to convey the information in both Russian and English language. And I think it's important to just be able to look at the situation with our eyes open. And what we're seeing right now is support for Ukraine that is vanishing, has vanished. In my mind, I kind of looked at January 20th as a certain Cinderella's ball at the Prince's Palace. You may remember when Cinderella went to the ball, everything was wonderful. And then all of a sudden at midnight, the clock struck and everything changed. And I was expecting everything to change on January 20th, when President Trump took oath of office, for which he forgot to put his hand on the appropriate book, whatever, it's not required. At that point, I expected support for Ukraine to cease completely. But we've been very lucky because we managed to get additional help to Ukraine for another 5, 6 weeks. And this administration's point of view is very, very straightforward and direct. It considers Ukraine to be a Russian issue. This is something that Russia needs to work out, and it's fundamentally an admittance that we no longer live in a world where right and wrong matter, and we live in a world where there's a strong and then there's weak. And right now, the demonstration of what strength means is tested by Ukraine, because if Donald Trump can sell Ukraine because he controls Ukraine, then that's one thing. But if he doesn't control Ukraine, if without American help, Ukraine can continue to fight and Perimoga can be still Ukrainian, then Donald Trump is selling hot air when he talks with Putin, because he can't sell Ukraine. And I think that's something that Ukrainians have to understand, that only Ukrainians can decide what happens to Ukraine. No matter whether Americans talk about Ukraine, don't talk about Ukraine, Ukraine decides if it can survive with Europe, with other allies such as Canada and around the world, whether that alliance can defeat Russia. In the meantime, as the United States appear to be, well, switching sides. And now we're hearing about the latest initiative of the Trump government is to take away legal protection status from people who came to the United States from Ukraine, fleeing the war. Now we're looking at making them into more illegal immigrants, or asking them to, well, telling them to leave the country. That's expected now in April. So we're now seeing this like a pendulum, this pendulum swing the other way, and it's a little intimidating to see how far it will go. And of course, I have to say that while it is unconscionable that we are no longer sharing our intelligence with Ukraine, considering who is leading the intelligence in the United States and the American administration, there is a pretty big consensus that Ukraine may be better off without sharing intelligence with America. The same way we are probably not going to see other intelligence services share their information with the United States, because we've been compromised. Our entire country has been compromised between the people who lead the country and people who are running it, which is Elon Musk. So, on some level, considering the situation in the United States, perhaps negotiations should not really include Donald Trump. Maybe negotiations should go directly to Elon Musk, because if Elon Musk can be persuaded, then Donald Trump seems to agree with everything Elon Musk says. So maybe Donald Trump is not the real decision maker here in the first place. But we certainly do have our mad printer here, as you referenced in your question, which is great, because I was thinking about it. The same way that Russian legislature became this mad printer pumping out crazy laws, we have a president who pumps out crazy tweets. That's, has a similar effect, and also highlights who's really running the show right now, Elon Musk. So you have nothing against monarchy. See, then I guess you're not an American. Because in America, we don't like monarchies, we don't like monarchs, never have. And that is something that Americans are looking at this and going, king? What? And notice how references to Donald Trump being a king have disappeared. Because that is really crossing the line of all diplomacy and world wars and everything, because Americans do not like the idea of a king. Well, Russians worked around it just fine because they got a president and he's kind of like a czar, but he's called president, so there you go. Look, we're looking at a different world. There's no question about it. We were in a certain world until Russia collapsed. We were really in a certain world until Russia decided to begin to reassert itself against against the world by going on these by attacking Georgia and on and on and on. And the desire to make peace and to appease this brings me to the key question of what I think you're asking about and what Americans would like to find out. Because you're right, I live here in America. I deal with Americans every day. What is going on? Well, guess what? Americans don't like talking about politics. Americans would like to just kind of be nice, talk about kids, ask how everything else is, how everything great. Okay. And that's how the quiet American, the identity of quiet American. And that's really the crux of it. What is our identity? Are we quiet, nice people? Or is our identity as Americans what it is now as it is represented by the Trump administration or Trump-Vance administration, where we're now the brutal Americans? Are we really brutal Americans or are we quiet Americans? Do we quietly want to help or do we want to brutally go around and break things and look at things like Curtis Yarvin, who is a philosopher who can be looked at to inspire this techno-autocratic movement that you're describing? And it is real because we have these techno-oligarchs who believe that monarchy, a neutral word to them, also like it is to you, something that would not be necessarily bad for the United States. Have a CEO. The only problem with it is that government is not a business for a variety of reasons. For instance, business can go out of business. This is what Donald Trump knows a lot about. He's done it 6 times with bankruptcies. Government can't do that because government has to continue to provide services. Also, governments can have nuclear weapons, which businesses usually do not. So there's differences between how you run those two kinds of enterprises. And to say that apparently monarchy is the best way for America to go is not only anti-American, it's kind of it's cherry picking from history. And it's very important to understand that this brutal American is not like a super smart American. It's almost like a Dunning-Kruger American who doesn't know all the problems he's causing, all the things he's missing while he's being brutal. There will be consequences. We have a Secretary of Health and Services who is sending people who have measles vitamin A, bought by plane. So we have this kind of what's been described as a slide into idiocracy. And that is a country that is easy to fool and surprisingly easy to take over by somebody who's who's willing to act in a very brutal manner. So this is a question that, Vitaly Portnikov has discussed so much, and I think it is such an important point of what is the Ukrainian identity? What is it, how as compared to Russian identity? Because Ukrainian identity, of course, is unique. And what is it? And Americans right now are really having this identity crisis battle. Who are we? Are we a country that is quiet Americans, that are nice Americans, who will ignore politics as much as possible? Or are we the brutal Americans who are walking around pointing our finger at people, telling them how they should live their lives and not thinking that it's going to bring any sort of consequences? But you know what blows up quiet American? Ukraine. Because when quiet Americans hear about what's going on in Ukraine, They go, that's no, I can't. No, that's unconscionable. Because what the United States is doing to Ukraine right now is absolutely unconscionable. And I want to take this opportunity to apologize from all Americans to people of Ukraine for what we did on November 5th. Because elections have consequences. We knew this. Those that paid attention to news voted for Kamala Harris, but we still got what we got. And I do feel that until people who believed in Donald Trump will not get hurt sufficiently to break their belief. And one of the ways to break out of the belief into cult of personality is to realize that Donald Trump has very close working relationship with Vladimir Putin. And when people realize that, it's great. I just go, wow, another one woke up. Good morning. And until Trump supporters, for whatever reason, realize that Trump is not a solution, we're going to be stuck in this divided country. Дякую. Antin, I think that what we have to realize, because it's happening in front of our eyes, if we're willing to open them and see what's going on, is and this another day of shame for the United States, February 28th. I feel like there could be, after this administration, there could be like a daily calendar of shame where we can have one. What's today's? Oh, we did this. Oh, we voted with Russia in the United Nations against Ukraine. Oh, that's a day of shame. Okay, so and then what happened between Trump and Zelensky when Trump and Vance attacked Zelensky? Oh, that's a day of shame. Okay, but what it was, in my opinion, it was Trump administration filing for divorce. And it was very clear, and I think Zelensky did his best. He tried to explain that for lots of reasons, marriage still makes a lot of sense. There's children involved. Come on, but let's look at pictures. It looked almost like that kind of a family situation where Zelensky ended the meeting by showing Trump emotional pictures of wounded people in Ukraine that looked like he was trying to show him some family photos to kind of get some tears, from Trump to understand, to call back the divorce. But no, and it's important to realize that divorces can be different. Divorces can be amicable, divorces can be not amicable, and divorces with a nuclear state that has been helping you and supporting you a lot for the last 3 years is going to be painful, because United States has done so much to help and to sustain Ukraine for the past 3 years that to take all of that away is not just unconscionable, it's also really painful and difficult. So I think that anything that in that situation Zelensky can do to lessen the burden on his country, I think is very understandable. I think that it's very clear what is being done to Ukraine by everybody. Just some people consider that to be a great business opportunity, and other people consider it to be unconscionable. And that's the choice. But in that situation, I'm afraid that the bigger part of the divorce is that it's not even Donald Trump that's really driving this train, and not even Elon Musk, but Vladimir Putin, who clearly doesn't like Zelensky very much. And I think that is a problem for Zelensky as far as Trump is concerned. And until Zelensky is out of the picture, Mr. Putin clearly is not going to be happy. So it's important to get Mr. Zelensky out of the picture as far as Trump is concerned. Now, Ukrainian people also have an opinion here, and they have a voice here, and they can reject anything. Ukrainian people have spoken loudly in the past. That's what Maidan is all about. So when American president thinks that he can tell Ukrainians who's going to be their leader, there's a certain lack of understanding of history. But that doesn't mean that Donald Trump won't try. And so right now, this is as much about getting rid of Zelensky and helping Putin with his ultimate goal, which is capture of Ukraine. And that's where we come down to the crux of it, is that there's a substitution of meaning, which is really another just perversion of what happens when we go from a democratic to a dictatorial state, which we're in a process right now, is everything gets perverted. And when we talk about peace, when Trump and Putin say peace, they don't mean peace. They mean surrender, capitulation, and capture. And until, as long as Zelensky is going to be against capitulation and capture, he's going to be, as far as Trump is concerned, against peace. Because to Trump that's what it means. But to Zelensky, it means peace means guarantees of future safety and security. And to those who are seeking guarantees from the United States, I have just two words: Budapest Memorandum. I think that Elon Musk is clearly the first American oligarch, in the sense that we have somebody who, while his business may be collapsing because sales of Tesla are going down, 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 he at the same time may be less and less dependent on those individual customers and more dependent on those government contracts where, if he can get government to everybody drive Tesla and everybody, and he can take over other contracts like he's already doing, where he is taking over a broadband internet provider, likely contract taking it away from Verizon, I understand, then that's one way to finance his future and to continue to stay the richest person in the world. So just by sucking out the resources of becoming basically part of United States government with a kind of a controlling stock with options, with a controlling, whatever the term is. It's also important to, I think, acknowledge that Elon Musk is American oligarch, but he's not a world oligarch, in a sense that, for instance, in China, he's not running the show. He's not the one doing it. And so he has to put up with other people in other situations. I don't know, even Iran, with different scenarios, but he's not running truly the world. So we should also acknowledge that as well. But he is trying to, because if he takes over, for instance, that internet contract for regular Americans, so you're going to have everybody, let's say, using Starlink. On one hand, that's lots of money, but it's also lots of power and control for Elon Musk, which is clearly part of his, I think it's his toolbox, is to really gather all the resources of this planet in order to go, I think, to the next planet. He's kind of like this invasive intergalactic species who is trying to kind of take Earth and take it to Mars. And there he can sell air, and everybody, if somebody hasn't read the Total Recall, great science fiction novel by Peter Anthony, I believe, but also a movie. Highly recommend. Could be future of Elon Musk, where he's headed. But in the meantime, he wants to gather metals, and a couple of words about the precious, the rare earth metals that Donald Trump is trying to extract from Ukraine. Those are, first of all, it's unclear if Ukraine has any or how much, according to official sources that may not be official anymore. No, I think the last information is from Soviet surveys, I understand, from American press. So there's no proven reserves of anything, period. But second is, it is extremely harmful to nature and to the environment. And that is why in other places where these rare earth minerals may exist, including the United States, development of them is kind of, we don't want to do that because we don't want to destroy our environment. So if Ukraine would like to do it, like China is doing it now, then clearly Donald Trump doesn't have a problem with it. But I think that's also something that has to be acknowledged. And at the same time, it's hard to understand what is the danger of signing even an agreement at this point. Just like whatever it says, the situation is developing so fast that I frankly feel that having, the fact that Zelensky sent a letter and Donald Trump read the letter at State of the Union speech, I think was really good, because Donald Trump seemed to be in better spirits. And that's a good thing, to put him in a good mood. So if that means sending him a letter saying you're willing to sign anything, that makes him feel like master of a deal. Now you're getting it. Now you're starting to see the kind of how it works. But ultimately, I just, when it comes to Zelensky and Trump, there's an analyst who I generally respect, Ian Bremmer, who I disagree with him on this assessment, who said that Zelensky did not consider that Trump has a very fragile ego. And I guess in my mind, it makes it feel like almost remember Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall, and that whole story, Shaltai Baltai. And I feel like Zelensky is just not going to be the one who can put together that ego and pieces, and I don't know who can put it together except for Putin and Musk. So that part is clear. And as far as Europe, just to finish answering your question, it's important to weaken the Europe for Donald Trump. And if that, because he looks at European Union as something that was put together to get at America. And so he wants to weaken Europe and European Union if that means that he can negotiate with each country individually, because certain countries, you're right, he absolutely loves them. Zakachanil, Italy, and France. He seems to be enamored with Macron's French accent. So he is kind of a typical, what they call in Russian, zlob, which is a kind of a, approach, a view of the world, zlob. And
Ну, є такий ще термін реднек і так далі. Так, цікаво.